Welcome back to 3 Up, 3 Downs National League Division Breakdown. We have been finishing up with the NL East, and we're finishing up with the Washington Nationals, the fifth-place team, a team that scrambled to win 55 games last year. A lot of excitement between this Nationals team in a year where they did deal their franchise superstar in Juan Soto to the Padres. The Nationals, what do they got returning for a lineup? Let's take a look. Leading off for this team, Lane Thomas, followed by Corey Dickerson, JOEYMENESES, Yamir Candelario, Kelbert Ruiz, Dominic Smith, CJABRAMS, Victor Robles, and Luis Garcia. What do you got on this Nationals starting lineup?
Yeah, so this team's terrible. I think everyone knows that too, and they're kind of a joke because they've traded Soto, Harper, or I guess they let Harper walk, but traded Soto and Trey Turner in like the last 2 years, which is just brutal. I mean, you hate to see it. There's some prospects coming, but the lineup as we see it right now is bad. JOEYMENESES, pretty sick. He's having a great World Baseball Classic right now.
Belted 2 home runs versus the U.S.
Yeah, and he's been a great story for this team because he kind of got a shot after the Soto trade and took advantage. He was great. He was just fantastic. He's going to be 31 this year. If he has a good year, I look for him to be traded to a good team. I think he's going to be a really good bat. Yamir Candelario, just like kind of, I mean, when he's like a solid bat. He's playing third base for this team right now. Interestingly enough, he was the starting first baseman for the Dominican after Vladdy went down, which is odd because he's not that good. You'd think the Dominican would have somebody else, but I like Yamir. You know, he has his moments where he looks like he could be like an actually good player on a good team. But he hasn't proven to be that, but still 29, so good pickup there.
Tough when you go from Detroit to another bottom of the cellar team.
Exactly. Kelbert Ruiz just got a contract extension, kind of a pay him before he's good. It will be interesting. He was one of the main pieces in the Trey Turner trade. Excited to see what he can do this year. And then CJABRAMS, another top prospect. He was part of the Soto trade. Again, if you're a Nationals fan right now, you're looking for that next wave, and some of it's already here. I mean, they made a point of trading for MLB-ready prospects. They didn't want this to be too long of a rebuild. And you'll see throughout the roster, there are guys who are expected to come contribute this year who are expected to be a part of the next round. If you're a Nationals fan, I think by the end of the year, you want to see CJABRAMS in the top 3 of the lineup. You want to see him make that progression where he's there. But yeah, I'd say Kelbert, CJABRAMS, and Meneses are guys to watch.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think it's a tough situation for Nationals fans. Obviously, winning the World Series in the last 5, 10, I don't remember what year it was at this point, but coming off a winner, a destruction of the roster tends to happen. That is what has happened in Washington. It is tough to say goodbye to superstars like they have, but it's the reality. And I think for Nationals fans, it's a prospect watch. It's watching how a guy like CJABRAMS performs, how a guy like Meneses performs, how a guy like Candelario steps into a lineup like this. It's not let's go watch them win 70 games, because that's just not what's going to happen with this roster. I think the fact is that they won 55 games last year. I do pick them for an improvement. I'm not getting to my projections yet, but I do think you're spot on. It is a pretty brutal roster, if not the worst roster in the major leagues. Yeah. But
one thing before we move on from the lineup, one thing I do want to talk about, because this is something I think people should be very excited about. James Wood was, I think, the biggest piece they got back. And this is with CJABRAMS. This is with Mackenzie Gore. This is the biggest piece they got back in the Juan Soto trade. One of the best prospect hauls I've ever seen. And I think baseball has ever seen, really. They got a ton. James Wood's 6'7", 240, and he can steal bases and run. If you're looking for a comp, and I know this is lofty, but the comp is Aaron Judge.
Yeah.
The comp is literally Aaron Judge, and he has continued to mash. It's one of those guys who was drafted as a toolsy guy, and has continued to just develop exactly how you'd want him to. Right?
I agree.
It's not just tools. He should come up at some point this year and be excited, because he's going to be must-watch TV. So Nationals fans, I know it's tough, but get ready for James Wood. I'm as high as I can be on a prospect with James Wood.
Absolutely, I completely agree. Moving on, let's take a look at this rotation and the bullpen. The rotation is led off by Patrick Corbin, followed by Josiah Gray, Trevor Williams. The other piece of that San Diego trade, Mackenzie Gore, and Chad Kuhl in terms of the rotation. He's right.
Disgusting.
I mean, the fact is you've got 5 guys that could be high 4 ERAs. You're hoping to see a step by Mackenzie Gore.
Yeah.
But in reality, not a huge excitement piece of this
I
roster.
mean, it's exciting if you want to see a high-scoring game. If you don't really care too much about the Nationals or baseball, go to a Nationals game when anyone but Mackenzie Gore is pitching, and they're going to get rocked, dude.
Yeah.
Patrick Corbin is one of the worst pitchers in baseball, and he's getting paid a ton. He's horrible. He's just absolutely brutal. Josiah Gray, bad. Trevor Williams, bad. Chad Kuhl, bad. Mackenzie Gore, let's see what he can do. He's top prospect for a reason, and he can twirl the ball.
Yep.
Excited to watch him pitch, but everything else is just disgusting and abysmal.
Oh, I completely agree. It does beg the question of what do you expect to see? Does Steven Strasburg take the mound for this team this year after kind of
cool.
an injury-riddled past few years? You hope to see him healthy.
That'd be cool, man.
But that would also, you'd expect to be a trade piece for a team that needs a 3 or 4 starter at this point. You don't know what's left in the tank of Steven Strasburg. The bullpen is led by Kyle Finnegan, followed by Carl Edwards Jr., Hunter Harvey, as Ramirez, Alex Colomé, Mason Thompson, Paulo Espino, and Thad Ward. What do you got on the bullpen?
It's really bad too. Probably just as bad as the rotation. If you have Alex Colomé coming in, and I loved Alex Colomé for what he did with the White Sox.
Yep.
But he's been past his prime for a long time, and he's not getting better.
I agree.
There's nothing. I see Mason Thompson's 25. That's kind of interesting to me. Maybe he's got something in the tank. What you're really hoping for here, and I do like Carl Edwards Jr. I feel like he was on a different roster too. One of the other
he was a Cub. He was a Cub for a while.
I know, and he had a brief stint in the White Sox organization.
Yep.
This last year, I don't know if he pitched maybe a couple of games, but yeah, you're hoping for somebody you can trade. That's like literally what you're watching for. If somebody gets off to a hot start, be excited because he may be a trade piece that you can flip, and that could be good for this team in the long run. But not a good bullpen doesn't need to be a good one. I mean, this team's going to be bad, so it's fine. What you're hoping for is trade bait.
Yep. No, I completely agree. I think the best arm in this bullpen has to be Kyle Finnegan, a guy who is projected on Fangraphs for about 29 saves. It's going to be the heavy majority of the wins for this Nationals team. But if you had to pick an X factor, I think I know who you might be picking. But who's your X factor for this team?
Yeah, my X factor, just because I'm obsessed with him. James Wood. He's not even on the roster, and I'm not even sure he'll play this year. I mean, you never really know. They might save those service years, but James Wood's my X factor because I am going to be following the Nationals for the sole purpose of seeing when he gets called up, and that doesn't mean I'm watching the games. When I hear he gets called up, I'm going to watch him play because I think he has just the biggest superstar potential, and that's exciting. One thing I will watch out for here, and this is something that applies to James Wood, applies to a lot of these young guys. Mm-hmm. Are they going to maybe take the approach of the early signing? You're a rookie. They did it with Keibert Ruiz, but they just showed that they didn't want to re-sign any of their big names. Are they going to say, hey, let's lock some of these guys up so if we do get one of these superstars, we don't have to let them walk or trade them again?
Build the core. I completely agree with you. My X factor for this team, a guy who lit it up against the U.S. in the World Baseball Classic, JOEYMENESES, in his first full year as an MLBer. I'm hoping to see him bolster his trade his trade ability and give this Nationals team a reward come trade deadline. Projections, easy. Seller, worst team in the league.
Yeah, I really don't disagree. And we've talked about there's some other bad teams in the league too. They're going to be with the Reds. They're going to be in that category.
Yeah, it's tough. I still see this team worse than the Reds, unfortunately, but we'll see what happens. National fans, if you feel like we missed anything or if we weren't harsh enough or too harsh on your team, feel free to let us know in the comments directly below. Otherwise, give us a like, subscribe, check out all of our STARSIXMEDIA content. That concludes our National League East Division breakdown. We're moving on to the Central Division next, but stay tuned. We've got much more for you in store.